something more. My partner was ready. As an old soul on this planet, a Lemurian, he was ready for it all to bust wide open and a greater truth to reveal itself. He was slow at it, but all we had to do was poke a little and show him some things that he couldn't believe, and that's when he said, "Show me." And he also added, by the way, if it isn't there, you only had one chance. One chance is all we need to show the incredible love for you. Did you know this? You all have free choice. But every once in a while, if you want to go to the next level, or perhaps beyond the next level, to multi-levels, we may show you some other things and ask you to look again, and ask you to surrender a little bit and allow things to be certain ways that you perhaps weren't all ready to allow. It happened in my partner's stair steps for him as he found out more and more of how it works and who he was and what was possible. This is the message of today. It happened to the man who sits in the chair, whose voice you hear. It has happened to so many. When we poked a little bit, and finally they said, "Are you there?" And we loved them. And it was never the same. We loved them. And it was never the same. I'm crying in love with all of you. And so it is.
And with that beautiful message from Kryon, I now invite you to bring your awareness back into your body. If you've had your eyes closed, I invite you to open your eyes. And earlier we mentioned that tonight is our episode 100 for Healing Wednesday. I can hardly believe it's now 100 episodes, and we have someone very special in our studio joining us. And we told you last week that Lee is going to give you the full story of exactly how Kryon came to Lee with the help of our special guest, Joy Roby. Now, some of you already know Joy. She's the co-presenter and partner of Marilyn Harper with the double-digit shows that they do every single month. Marilyn Harper has actually been interviewed on our program. She channels Adironda and the Council of Light. But there is more to Joy because she is the originator and owner of Solopreneur Productions. It's an incredible company where you can learn a grounded methodology of online marketing and business to fulfill your divine mission. She's a one-woman show, a solopreneur. She has successfully built and sold 4 startup companies. She's an artist. She's a writer, a complete Pollyanna, which is why I think she gets on so well with the Kryon material. And Joy has spent a decade as a marketing executive building new business units within corporations, and now she is running the marketing and planning for this program and all the other shows that Lee and I have been doing online for the past 2 years. She is the brains behind the marketing and startup for the upcoming Chrysalis Academy that we've been talking about, the new Kryon School. I am so excited to be able to say, Joy, welcome to the show.
Wow. I'm listening to that and I'm thinking, who is she talking about? Oh my gosh, thank you for that. And one of the things that Monica and I learned early on was that her being the person that is like the right hand and left hand of Lee Carroll and Kryon, and me being the right hand and left hand of Marilyn Harper, that we actually had a lot in common.
We do, yeah.
I have a lot in common with Marilyn.
You
That's
do.
right.
We get together, we just go.
Yeah. It's like Adironda and Kryon are talking.
Yeah, they're like peas in a pod.
Oh my gosh, they really are. And I would also be remiss to not mention and thank my team, because I may be a solopreneur, which is SOULO, but I also have an incredible team behind me. But tonight, we want to talk about Lee. So let me tell you a few things about Lee that you may not know.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is right. Did you know that he had, back in 1999, one of the best-selling book at Hay House, and there was no channeling in it. It was a book he wrote with Jan Tober called The Indigo Children, and this is where he and Jan introduced the term indigo children for the very first time on the planet. And, I don't think people realize that that's actually you, Lee, that.
Yeah.
Was that on purpose?
No, it actually wasn't. None of that. Everything is, happens as it should. So that was, and most people don't know that. That's why I guess you're revealing it now.
Yeah. And did you know that Lee was invited to the United Nations in New York City 7 times to channel? And this is another one that just blows me away because I've done a lot of traveling actually with he and Monica. Guess how many miles he has flown on one airline alone? 1.7 million. I mean, that is incredible. I think you must have your name hanging on the wall at United.
I like the peanuts.
But tonight, we want him to tell the full story of how Kryon happened. So, Lee, I know that you were a huge skeptic of everything New Age. Is that right?
I was more than a skeptic. I made fun of it. And I'll just begin, because if you want to know something, I would say that there's a lesson in all of this, and it's submerged in how all this took place. I married Jan Tober, and Jan Tober, she was my wife at the time. I've had a couple, and she's still my best friend. And she actually helped me start Kryon, so very, very valuable to know about her. But when we married, love is love, and I didn't really care necessarily that she was into very, very strange, wacko stuff. And that was, of course, exactly what I do now. And so I was like, I told her, I said, we can get along fine, but I'm in the real world and you're in the pretend world. And so let's just keep everything away from me that's weird. Because, you're not going to find me liking it much. And that didn't work, folks. It didn't work. So there's one lesson. If you ever marry somebody, that's for those of you who want to marry somebody. And they're not necessarily on board with you in several ways. There may be some difficulties. But in this particular case, she would have people come over to the house they weren't just strange. They were alarmingly wacko. I mean, they were nuts. Of course, that's what I do now. But this is a perception of what I thought New Age was. It made no sense. It wasn't the real world. It was pretend. And you could have, all this talk about being from other planets and past lives and all. It was just good for social conversation for women. And don't throw rocks at me or send me letters. But this is how I felt about it. Then something happened. And this is always the case. And that's something. And you can interrupt me anytime. But if that something happened was she wanted me to go see a channeler. And I, of course, said, no. And why would I ever do that? And she says, well, because that's my birthday. And I went, okay, so let me get this right. I'm going to go see a channeler for your birthday. And she said, yes, I want you to have a reading. That's what they call it. And she also said, well, it's okay because he's a man. His name was Frank Alper. He's passed now and a wonderful channel. And I said, well, okay, I'll get a reading from this gentleman for your birthday. And so I'd never done anything like this before, and I was a little apprehensive, but I knew all I had to do was sit there and listen, and they would run a cassette tape. Folks, do you remember cassettes? We're talking a long time ago. This is cassettes. Good thing it wasn't an Edison cylinder, but I mean, this was cassettes. And so I went. I sat in front of this gentleman. I walked in. First things, nobody told me this was an hour reading. I thought he was just going to look at me and go, you're from the planet, fourth planet from the whatever in Sirius. I figured he was just going to give me gobbledygook and I could leave, and the cassette was there, and we're fine. 1 full hour. Of course, I wasn't paying attention. I didn't care. And all I heard was, have you seen those Peanuts cartoons where they go, wah, 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 and those are the adults talking, when Snoopy is there? Well, that's what it sounded like to me. It was just wacko stuff. It made no sense at all. I heard nothing. And so I was drifting away, hoping I wouldn't go to sleep while he talked to me. And this was like, he was kneecap to kneecap with me. This was not across the room. That made me uncomfortable as well, because I was just too close to a crazy person. And so what I said at that point in time is, I almost said this. I felt sorry for the guy. I mean, I really did. I said, how could, here we go again, how could a man do this? I mean, men are supposed to be a lot more practical. I mean, you've got to make a living. How can you've decided to make a living doing weird things like this? And most of your clients are only going to be women because they do weird things. Folks, I want you to just stop right there. Just think about what I'm doing today, all right? Just, before you send me letters. So here I am with him. I almost said it. I almost put my hand on his knee and said, stop, just stop. I can help you. I almost did that. Luckily, I didn't make a fool of myself, other than just being there and obviously not paying attention. God bless Frank Alper, because I'm sure he's seen this before, when the one person in a partnership or a marriage brings the other person who's not interested at all to experience it. Well, I got out of there in one piece, and I was so happy. I gave Jan the cassette, and I said basically to her, never again. I don't care if you have another birthday. I don't want to do this ever again, because it was uncomfortable for me to see a crazy guy. All right. So let's then move 3 years from that point.
So that was 37 years ago,
right? That was
right?
37 years ago. That's right. So this was like, way before Kryon appeared in my life. So, and this is part of what I'm teaching, is that there was a ramp up for this guy. And that means that I was very, very obstinate. I wasn't going there. You couldn't talk me into it. I didn't want to look. And even after I got a reading from a channeler, that even made it worse. Yeah. So you see, Spirit they've got to do something here for me that is a little for the hard case. So let's wind 3 years later. Now we're getting closer to 89, but not quite there yet. 3 years later, she looked at me and she said, there's a new guy in town, not a channeler, but he's a reader. He's 21 years old. And I immediately said, no, because I knew where this was going. And she said, look, his readings are only 20 minutes. I'm going to get one. Just come with me. Let's have lunch, and you get one too. 20 minutes. I mean, what's in it? And I said, am I going to have to sit in front of him while he babbles? I said, no, he's just giving readings. He's not channeling. You don't have to go through that again. I said, okay, I'll do that. That sounds okay. We'll have a nice lunch. So we did. We went, and before lunch, she had a reading, and then I went to this fellow. I forgot his name now, but I looked at him, and he looked at me, and there was immediate eye contact, and he looked at me, and he said, you don't want to be here, do you? And I said, I was impressed, first of all, that the guy, he really was a reader.
Oh my God, he's psychic! Proof.
And he was saying, this can be very easy, and I know you're paying for 20 minutes, but I can give it to you in 5. Are you interested? And I said, I like you. I like you. You're the guy for me. And so this is how this began. So it was a little more comfortable for me, and I said, so you really have a message for me? And he said, it's all over you. He said, I can tell, I just have one message, and you can take it or leave it, but you don't have to sit down even. And I said, yeah, I like this. This is my kind of reading, So, and he didn't look weird. Yeah, the young man, handsome guy, he didn't look strange. Not that Frank looked strange, but the whole persona of channeling at that time was, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So he looks at me, and I'll never forget this. He looks at me and he says, there's a magnetic master named Kryon who wants to get a hold of you. Yep. Pregnant pause, folks. Pregnant pause right there. And I didn't know what to say. I mean, he could have said, like, Mother Mary and the commander from the Zoom control want to crawl under the table in your house. I mean, you know what? It was a complete and total non sequitur. What did that mean? And so I thanked him, and I said, I am so glad that this was the whole reading, and there's nothing more. And he says, there's nothing more. So I left, and of course I came out early. Jan was in the lobby waiting for me, this little office that he'd rented. And because I was so early, I mean, she said, what happened? Is something wrong? Did you hurt him? I mean, you know, it's like, she didn't say that, but that's how it felt to me. And what happened at that point in time, I'll always remember. There was a couple of things. First of all, I was just chuckling to myself that I'd gone